continue my conversation as I had today on radio and TV with this theme. In early 2025, we warned you, Annie Cyrus, myself, Alex Newman, and others, that we believed that Christians would be increasingly targeted in 2025. That was before the Charlie Kirk murder, long before that. Early 2025, we warned you that we believe the attacks on Jews would sadly continue, and you would start to see an increase in specific attacks on self-described public Christians. Here's the headline at LifeSite News, lifenews.com. Brown University shooting victim Ella Cook remembered as a conservative Christian. I'm going to talk to Alex Newman about this, but I also want to talk to Matt Tardio about this tonight. And by the way, we heard today that a nuclear scientist, a professor at MIT, was found murdered today, about an hour from Brown University. I don't know if there's any connection. I have no idea. But some weird things are going on, folks. But the targeting of Christians, I'm going to talk to Alex Newman about this. The United Nations targets homeschoolers through human rights scheme. Well, that's targeting Christians because that's who largely is behind the homeschool movement. The homeschool movement in America was largely founded by Christians. I know, I used to speak at many, many homeschool conferences. Then we have this headline. Disturbing details emerge. Was Brown University another Charlie Kirk-style assassination? This young woman, as I've already mentioned, was murdered. But what's interesting is the journalist Mark Halperin, we're going to play a clip tonight. He's saying that sources are telling him that this was an attack that was specifically targeting Ella Cook, a prominent conservative. Sadly, it seems as though our prediction in early 25 is coming true. How about this headline from the New York Post? Church-going woman suffered severe burns. Church-going woman suffered severe burns and random toxic chemical attack while walking at a park. Here's the question again. Was she targeted because she was a Christian? Was she targeted because she was known for someone that went to the church in the area? I don't know. But I don't believe in a lot of coincidences anymore. So we got Alex Newman. We've got Matt Tardio. I guess there's been some more video footage released by the FBI of the would-be, or of the actual assassin, murderer, Ed Brown. We'll play some of that. I wrote an article and released it earlier today. Here it is. The Turtle Island Liberation Front. You know about that group? I'll tell you about it. And I will tell you about how this, I think, fits in with the Weather Underground. There was also pro-Palestinian, pro-Mao back in their 1974 manifesto, Prairie Fire. Well, nothing new under the sun, just new groups, same worldview, same ideologies merging together. I want to ask Mark Mitchell about this. Here's the Vanity Fair. Susie Wiles, J.D. Vance, and the Junkyard Dogs, the White House chiefs of staff on Trump's second term. Some things were said. Did she really say these things that were said? We'll tell you what she said, supposedly. Did she really say that? Was it recorded? Is it documented? Is she being taken out of context? What's going on here? Here's another headline. Trump's top aide acknowledges score settling behind prosecutions. In interviews with Vanity Fair, Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, said President Trump has an alcoholic's personality. Called J.D. Vance a conspiracy theorist and concluded that Pam Bondi completely whiffed the early handling of the Epstein files. Is this out of context? Is it not accurate? I don't know. I'm going to ask Mark Mitchell, who was in the room, he says, with some of these people just about a month ago. What about, by the way, the comments by the president, who doubled down on them, by the way, in the Oval Office, about Rob Reiner, which has set off a lot of conservatives? How are women responding to that, which is very important for midterms? What is he further seeing, Mark Mitchell, in relation to the growing hostility between many people on the right that are frustrated that President Trump isn't doing enough, and the people on the left who are becoming more and more and more militant? It seems like, again, we're headed toward that civil war scenario, that the country isn't going to be able to stay together. And then let's bring in AI. What does he again think about where we're going with AI? And everybody's growing frustration with the system and politicians. Well, what do the polling numbers show us as to what Americans think about just turning it over to AI? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I want to know what the polling numbers say about that, because he's done some polling on it. I want to talk to him about the executive order to say to states, no, you don't have a say in what happens with AI and the tech bros and the data centers and all, which is not going over well with the governor of Arkansas or the governor of Florida, among others, both red and blue state governors. So we've got a lot to get to tonight, no doubt about it. All right, before we do, remember, we're brought to you by you. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors is where I need you to go. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I want to start out at worldviewtube.com/vault for right now, though, because this makes a great Christmas gift. Okay? Great Christmas gift. What will be next year? 36 years I've been doing this. All my radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, conference DVDs of 22 years of our Worldview weekends, all my documentaries, they're there. My new book on Hamas, my new book on my documentary Siege, my new book on my documentary Sabotage. I finished up the series on Why I'm a Christian Zionist, 4-part series the other night, Sunday night. I'm going to turn that into a book. That will go into the vault. You don't have to buy it. My commentary, my verse-by-verse commentary in the book of Revelation, that's coming out in the new year. You will not have to buy it. It'll be in the vault. I'm also going to release a new book in the new year based on the TV shows I did on the power elite and the history of the power elite, people who really run the country, if you will. Something some presidents have even acknowledged in the past, the power elite. And I'm going to talk about the power elite and transhumanism is eugenics. Transhumanism is eugenics. I'm going to get this into a book. That will come out in the first quarter of the new year. That will be in the vault. You won't have to buy it if you're a member. It'll automatically be a part of your membership, a PDF. Why would you not be a member of the vault for as little as $7.99 a month? Why wouldn't you get this as a gift for someone? This makes a great gift. If you do, just go to one of the plans, click Join the Vault. And if you do, fill out the information. But if you're buying it as a gift, please make sure you check this box right here. Is this a gift? Question mark. Yes. Check that box and then give it to them as a gift. You don't have to go out and fight the crowds, buy something that they probably don't need or want anyway. This will be a gift that keeps on giving all year long. Way better than a Jelly Club membership, Clark. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault. While you're there, go over to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You know I take it each and every day. Bella Grace. You know I take the Gatatana every day, the phytoplankton. You know I do the Newman. That's loaded with glutathione to detox your cells. Some studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, you got Worldview Talk there with your satellite phones. These make great Christmas gifts as well. Free satellite phone when you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans. Their solar generators. I have one of those. Their beanies that knock down the EMF blankets, anti-EMF blankets. They have the bulletproof backpacks, very large bulletproof backpacks that are large enough to cover your main torso, your head. I mean, these would make great gifts for college students, high school, junior high, elementary school students. You should be buying these. You should have one. Everybody should have a bulletproof backpack. You never know when something's going to happen and you need something that's bulletproof to protect your major organs or your head. These are sensible gifts. WorldviewTalk.com, WorldviewTalk.com, or 1-866-738-3224. And again, the operators are standing by to help you and answer all your questions. 1-866-738-3224. By the way, here you go. Another thing, Worldview Healthcare. Get your medical kits. Have your antibiotics on hand. Have your EpiPens on hand. I just ordered up EpiPens. You have some kind of allergic reaction. Do you have what you need? Do you have the antibiotics? Should the system go down for a few days? So many enemy states enemies foreign and domestic, not to mention all the different terror cell groups that are here. Remember, we just had Joe Kent testified the other day about how many, let me see if I can go to it real quick. Logan, pull that down. How many terrorist groups were here? Terrorist individuals. Let's see, Joe Kent. I think he said there were 18,000 terrorists here in America. I mean, what could these guys do to our power grid, right? So do you have the meds you need? Do you have the satellite phone? Do you have the solar generator? I interviewed Joe Kent in person, and I've had him on the broadcast, but I sat with him in person interviewing him. And now he's a major national security guy in the Trump administration. Look at his and listen to his warning.
We've made significant progress under President Trump's leadership. We have the jihadis of ISIS and al-Qaeda on the run in Iraq and Syria, thanks to the decisive action and the strikes that we've taken there recently since President Trump took office in January. However, we have a persistent threat from the individuals that were allowed into this country by the previous administration. The number one threat that we have right now, in my view, is the fact that we don't know who came into our country in the last 4 years of Biden's open borders. What we have identified is alarming, and I want to share that with you today. We just recently put out a warning of the heightened risk of terrorist attacks posed to the homeland by terrorists pretty much of all stripes, but in particular from ISIS and from al-Qaeda. NCTC has been crunching the numbers and going through the sheer volume of known and suspected terrorists that are in the country that came in under the Biden administration. So far, NCTC has identified around 18,000 known and suspected terrorists that the Biden administration let come into our country. These are individuals who under normal circumstances would never be allowed to enter our country because of their ties to jihadi groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda. Yet the Biden administration not only let them into the country, and in many cases facilitated their entry into the country, just like the entry of the Afghan terrorists who committed the terrorist attack here just before Thanksgiving, killing one of our National Guard members and wounding another. That Afghan was brought into the country as a group of over 100,000 Afghans who were brought here during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. These individuals, despite what has been reported, were not vetted properly to come into the United States. The individual terrorist who committed the attack in D.C., he was vetted to serve as a soldier in Afghanistan. The Biden administration essentially used his tactical level vetting as a ruse to bring him here and to bring him into our communities. And we've seen the tragic results of that. Now, that Afghan, that attacker, that terrorist is just one of 88,000. We've identified 2,000 of that group of 88,000 who have ties to terrorist organizations. We're working right now hand in hand with DHS and with the FBI to run down this 2,000, the Afghans who came here under Allies Welcome who have ties to terrorist organizations, and additionally the other 16,000 individuals with ties to terrorist organizations that Biden let into our country. That is probably the top terrorist threat that we face right now, and that doesn't include the individuals who came here illegally through the open border. That number, alarmingly, remains unknown at this time. We're trying to figure out who those individuals are as well.
Oh. So how many terrorists are in the U.S.? The answer is they don't know. He said 18,000 known and suspected terrorists the Biden administration let into the country. But how many altogether? We don't know. And there's supposedly the 60,000 Chi-Coms that have come into the country. So I don't know. Plenty of reasons to have some of your security gear that I keep talking about on hand. And I'm not suggesting you do anything that my family hasn't done. worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. And don't forget to go to our store, the freeze-dried food. You go here, you'll find the water filters and so much more. Again, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. With every purchase, you're helping to support the broadcast, as many of these sponsors give us back a percentage with each purchase. And these are products that that we believe in, that we use, and some of them, the ones that we love the most, Gatatana, Newman, Avella Grace, have clinical trials behind them. We highly recommend them. Please do some of your Christmas shopping here if you possibly can. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Let's get started. Joining me now is investigative journalist and author and talk show host in his own right, Alex Newman, whose program we also carry here. He's at libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. Alex, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Alex, I want to get to your article here in a moment about the United Nations. Here's the headline: UN targets homeschoolers through human rights scheme. Something we have to worry about here in America as well. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you real quick about what Annie Cyrus and I talked about at the 1 o'clock hour Central Time today. And that is something she, and I think you and I also warned about together early in 2025. And that was look for the targeting of Jews, look for that to continue, but look for them to begin to specifically target Christians, right? And so now we have this Brown University student who has been murdered. Here's the LifeSite News. Brown University shooting victim, Ella Cook, remembered as a conservative Christian. We also have reason to believe that maybe she or someone else in that classroom was being specifically targeted. We also have, and we'll get to that in a moment, then we have a headline here, church from the New York Post. Church-going woman suffered severe burns and random toxic chemical attack while walking at the park. Okay? This Annie said, look, this is an Islamic tactic. Throwing acid on women is an Islamic thing. Whether the guy is Islamic, we don't know. But what we were talking about today was the black-green axis. We used to talk about the red-green, the red being the Marxist, the green being the Islamist. She's warning now about what Iran came up with years ago, a black-green axis, which is the black is now being replaced by the red. The red was just really the Marxist. Now the black is anybody that hates America. Anybody that's against the system, that means the capitalist system, to burn down the system. Then we add that to a group we talked about today, and that is the Turtle Island Liberation Front, which I've written an article about them today. I don't know if we were able to send that over to you or not. Were we able to send that to you, Alex?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
Okay. I wrote an article this morning and researched on that. Let me see if I can bring it up real quick from our own website here. But it is, and I'll just tell you about it. You've been probably following this group. They supposedly were going to carry out multiple terrorist attacks on New Year's Eve. They've been stopped. They're being reported mostly as a pro-Palestinian group. Here's the New York Post. What is Turtle Island Liberation Front, the extremist anti-government group whose offshoot planned a New Year's Eve terror attack? It says here they're about the little-known pro-Palestinian, anti-law enforcement, anti-government extremist group. A reality is pro-Palestinian is just one segment. They're really more of a Marxist group from what I can see. And I brought up the Weather Underground, their manifesto from 1974 called Prairie Fire. Interesting, in 1974, this domestic terrorist group was promoting the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This group was praising Mao Zedong. This group's talking about burning down the capitalist system. This group is talking about Americans being, colonizers, right? Taking land from people. This is what this Turtle Island group, and the term Turtle Island, I guess, refers to all of North America, which I explained in my article today at Worldview Times, fits with La Raza, the race, that group that says California, New Mexico, Arizona, all need to go back to Mexico. Then you add in the Weather Underground. Then you add in the movie that came out earlier this year we talked about with Leonardo DiCaprio, One Battle After, which, if I remember correctly, was about basically a Marxist group, if you will, going after ICE and bombings. Now we have a group that apparently was going to be involved in all of this on New Year's Eve. And the reason I bring all that up is it seems as though we are now in that window where there's going to be more terrorist attacks in America, much of it perhaps by domestic actors who are foreign inspired or foreign funded or even foreign trained, going out, coming back in, but also specifically targeting Christians with what appears to be the targeting of Ella Cook at Brown University, the targeting of this woman who was as the New York Post said, church-going woman, suffered severe attack. Now we're going to go after homeschooling families. That's Christians. You notice a trend here, Alex?
Yeah, and this is not new, Brandon. Back in 2017, the Director of Policy and Planning, Rich Higgins, on the National Security Council, warned in a brilliant memo to Donald Trump that he was facing what he described in the document as a Maoist-style insurgency. And he warned Trump that it would be catastrophic to understand this as just regular politics. This is not regular politics. What you have here is a convergence of all these different organizations, the globalists, communist, socialist, jihadist, as you pointed out, basically any group that wants to destroy America. All coming together. And he said in the memo, they weren't just interested in destroying the United States as a nation. He said, really, the goal was destroying the United States as an ideal. And I think we're watching now the next phase of that, where they're starting to come out of the closet. They're starting with targeted assassinations. They're starting with terrorist attacks. They're starting with the shooting at our law enforcement agencies, and even attacking random people. It was in the news out in California recently, Brandon, you and I discussed that just people who had American flags flying in front of their house were getting nasty messages from left-wing terrorists saying, all I want for Christmas is a Nazi's head on a platter. These are terroristic threats being made. And I think what we're watching here now is the early stages of an engineered civil war. A lot of these dumb leftists, these radical college students with their purple hair that joined Antifa, they are cannon fodder, right? They are being weaponized and manipulated into believing that Trump is some sort of fascist dictator, and that basically humanity requires them to now stand in the gap and shoot Nazis, which would be basically anybody who disagrees with them, anybody who does believe in restoring our country. The jihadists, of course, have been mass imported into our country. And I always remind people, because obviously Islam is a threat in and of itself, but I think it's always important for people to remember how many Muslims were involved in the parliaments of European governments or in our Congress when they decided to open up our borders wide. Well, the answer is virtually none, right? The reason they have the communists and the globalists have mass imported Islamists into our country is to use them as cannon fodder in the war against the West, in the war against what used to be called Christendom. So I do believe we're in the early stages of this. I think it's already started, and I think it's going to get worse if the Trump administration doesn't succeed in diffusing this time bomb before it goes off.
Let me go to an audio clip of Mark. I think this is Mark Halperin talking about, the targeting perhaps of this. His sources are saying that this young Christian gal from Alabama going to Brown University was targeted, according to sources. Listen to this. Which sounds like Charlie Kirk kind of thing, right? Here we go.
That the family of I just need to look up her name. I apologize.
Ella Cook, I think.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That the family of Ella Cook, the Alabama young woman who was a sophomore, has been told that she was the target of what happened at Brown. I have no idea whether that's true. There's other theories about why the person did what they did, but now that we don't know who the assailant is, it's going to be harder to say. But if it's true that she was targeted, that's a big story, because she was one of the most visible conservatives on that campus. Don't know that it's true, but probably most of you don't even know that that's being alleged, because you'd have to follow certain accounts on X or have sources, as I do, who are telling me that. So Amber, if she was targeted, and again, we don't know that, but if she were targeted, what would the implications of that be?
Well, I'll start with a couple of things that I think lend credence to that theory, which is, one, typically when we see mass school shooters, they don't just stop and walk away, right? Usually they keep going until they're apprehended by police, shot dead, or they kill themselves.
Yeah, Amber,
in this case,
let me just stop you.
Yep.
I should have been clear. She was the number 2 person at the Young Republicans branch on Brown's campus. So that's why some people are concerned if she were targeted. Go ahead, Amber. I apologize.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, if the police are telling Brown students that they are safe, they don't have to shelter in place anymore, but they don't have a suspect in custody, I think that also suggests that this was some kind of targeted attack. Sadly, I wouldn't be surprised. When I was on campus at Georgetown, I was chair of the college Republicans. I had to report multiple threats against me in my final 2 years on campus.
So isn't it interesting? Talk about this, will you, on a national level? I mean, you have sources, I have sources that tell me that there are actually groups out there that have lists And that guys like you and I and others like Annie and a lot of our broadcast partners are on this list. And there may be multiple groups with multiple lists. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I've been hearing that for years. And if you follow some of the crazy left-wing social media sites like Blue Sky and Mastodon, what you'll find is they've even been caught posting lists of people they want to take out. People within the Trump administration, people within conservative media, people within conservative organizations. So I think what we saw with Charlie Kirk, what we may have just seen with Ella at Brown University, what we've seen with some of the targeting of ICE people, what we've seen with the targeting of people like Senator Nancy Schaefer, I think we're probably going to see more of that, right? There are hostile special forces operators in this country already, from hostile communist dictatorships. Some come from Venezuela, some come from Cuba, some come from China. You've got highly trained jihadists from different countries, Sudan and Somalia and Afghanistan, running around this country. And they have orders. Right? And a lot of them right now are just minding their own business. They're working as, bellhops. They're working as busboys at restaurants. They don't even have a parking ticket. Their instructions are just keep your head down, make a little bit of money, live in this apartment. And when your orders come, that's when you're activated. That's when you go start knocking people off of the list that you're supposed to be taking out. And I think there's a number of reasons for this. I mean, for one, they want to terrorize Americans into silence. They want everybody to be scared to say anything. This is an age-old tactic, right? Just terrorize everybody into silence, terrorize everybody into submission. For two, I think they want to provoke a hostile response. I think there is a deliberate effort to try to, and we saw a little bit of this in the early stages after Charlie Kirk was murdered. A lot of people saying, all right, the gloves are off, now it's time to shoot back. Who are you going to shoot back at, right? And I think that's part of the goal, to just provoke and enrage. And I think we may even see false flag attacks, right? People blamed who may not have been even involved, just in an effort to sow confusion, to sow chaos. And so what I would urge people is to be in prayer about this. We want to maintain lawful authority. If somebody says, hey, civil war broke out, now you got to join this militia with, Billy Bob and the pickup truck at the front. No, right? We have sheriffs in this country. We have governors in this country. We have lawful command structures, and we don't want to undermine that, and we don't want to be duped into following some Yahoo leader who may be an operative for who knows what, who may be trying to advance his own agenda. So there's a lot going on here, Brandon, and I think when you combine it with all the other stuff they've been working on, all the stuff that the World Economic Forum refers to as a poly crisis that they're cooking up, the financial destruction of the United States, the implosion of the everything bubble, people are going to be desperate. People are going to be confused. People are going to be crying out. I think we're headed for a very dangerous time. So I would just urge people, don't be fearful. God did not give you a spirit of fear, but be aware, be in the know about what's going on. And part of that is staying informed. Part of that is taking prudent precautions, not out of paranoia, again, not out of fear, but out of a sense of love for our neighbors, for our families, for our wives, for our children. We just need to take prudent precautions. And if you don't know good people in your community, now would be a really good time to start working on that. Try to get to know your sheriff, try to get to know your mayor, your police chief, try to get to know the people in your community who will ultimately be responding if things get out of control. We want to make sure we have good people in those positions. We want to make sure that they are educated. That's one of the reasons we've been doing the law enforcement intelligence brief for so many years. Unfortunately, our local law enforcement does not have a lot of good intelligence anymore from the federal government. And so we need to make sure that our sheriffs and our police chiefs are aware of what's going on. And who knows how much time we may have or not, but now would be a good time to get ready.
Indeed. There's an article on a website, a news website, talking about AI. And I thought it's very interesting. He closes out the article, because you just brought up AI and the big bust. He says, an epic AI-led stock market crash and the debt implosion would wipe out most of what's reckoned wealth in America, plunging the nation into a depression. If the Genesis mission makes the government a financial partner of the AI industry, that's Trump's Genesis plan, or the industry is deemed too big to fail, taxpayers will be stuck with the tab. Many of AI's promoters are on board with "you'll own nothing and be happy" world our rulers envision. A crash would fit right with their beyond Orwellian agenda to impoverish and enslave America. Thus, they might regard this bubble that must inevitably pop as an AI feature, not a bug. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think on an even more significant level, I think the crash that they are preparing, and I think the AI bubble may well be a big part of that, is going to be blamed on Donald Trump, and not just on Donald Trump as a person, but on the policies, or at least the perceived policies that he's been promoting. Lower or get rid of income taxes, restore free market capitalism, let's have deregulation. I mean, these things are all good in and of themselves, but if they get the blame for these,
after a gunman walked into an
sorry,
Ivy League.
That's my fault.
No problem. But if those ideas, free market capitalism, biblical principles, get the blame for the coming crash that was literally engineered by the opposite of that, the central banking cabal, the huge government, the out-of-control spending and borrowing, that would be very, very unfortunate. But I think that's the plan. An economic crisis is baked into the cake. There is no way around it now. I mean, the last economic crisis, we just kind of kicked the can down the road a little further by papering over it and printing a bunch of money. There is an economic reckoning coming, and it's going to be brutal. People are going to lose a lot of money. If you're really fortunate, you'll take a big haircut. You and I, Brandon, have talked a little bit about the great taking. They plan to take all of our securities. So, depending on how far they go, it could be really, really difficult. And if they can forever blame Trump and capitalism, the free market, it's going to be very, very bad. And I think that's their plan ultimately. So we've got to watch for this. Yes, I think the AI bubble is huge, but I think even more than just the AI bubble, we're dealing with the possible destruction of the U.S. dollar. We're dealing with an international market crisis far beyond just AI and even real estate, but into every sector that you can think of, combined maybe with hyperinflation. So I think we're headed for some very stormy economic waters, and people need to be paying attention.
And this is at a time when today we have gold at over $4,300 an ounce. Silver's been bouncing around $64, breaking through it, coming back down, breaking through it, coming back down. I mean, who would have thought $64 silver? I mean, a lot of us did. But,
yeah, right, yeah, we did.
But here it is. I mean, we're thinking $100, $200 silver eventually. Here we are, $64, right? Okay, let's go to an article by you over at libertysentinel.org. UN targets homeschoolers through human rights scheme. And this really goes with the goal of the power elite, the globalist, to target Christians. Remember, the Frankfurt School said the source of all suffering and oppression is Christianity and capitalism. And we began this conversation talking about the targeting now of Christians, not just Jews, but the targeting of Christians, perhaps the targeting and assassination, specifically because people are conservative Christians or upholding Christian values, trying to spark some kind of civil war. Again, I think they're trying to get the patriots and the constitutionalists and the conservatives to fall into a trap and go out there, as you warned about, and do something, which, again, people should be leery of that trap. But let's go to this one now. Well, let's go after the homeschoolers. Tell me about this, because this is the UN, but how do you see this playing out in America?
Well, this is a huge story. I'm amazed that it hasn't gotten more attention, Brandon, because UNESCO, the UN education agency, just put out a report just a few weeks ago. I've written on it extensively. It's in the New American Magazine. People can go read that. It's in the Epoch Times. I did a big one, and we've got it on my website as well. This report by UNESCO is very, very clear. A lot of times they'll beat around the bush and kind of try to conceal what they're saying, or at least say it in an indirect way. They're very blunt here. Homeschooling, if it's going to be allowed at all, must be very tightly regulated and controlled by government, to the point where they're going to do mandatory home visits, mandatory testing, where the content will have to be aligned with UN values. They specifically diss the fact that mothers do most of the homeschooling. They say this perpetuates negative gender stereotypes, and so that's really bad. They talk about mandatory testing so that they can control everything that's taught. It's very, very alarming. And you would think that this would be a joke, but it's actually not. If you read the acknowledgments page, it was prepared under the supervision of the policy chief at the education section of UNESCO. And it turns out the guy is literally a North Korean communist. He went to school in North Korea, born in North Korea, got a college degree from North Korea, served in the North Korean education ministry, and then moved over to UNESCO, where now he says that international human rights law requires governments to either ban homeschooling or control it so tightly as to make it essentially government school at home. And then just a couple of days ago, the New York Times dropped a massive opinion piece where it's a weird story. Some guy had kind of a weird experience homeschooling growing up. And now he's saying the federal government needs to impose strict controls on home education. You need to basically submit yourself and your family to state oversight if you want to be able to homeschool. They should be testing. They should be showing up at your house. So this is all coordinated. It's very coordinated. As you know, Brandon, because I spoke to you from while I was down there in Brazil at the UN Climate Summit, they know nobody's buying this anymore. They're beating a dead horse. But the heart of their strategy, UNESCO had an event there called Greening Education. And they said, really, the key to the global warming issue is to brainwash the next generation. And the head of UNESCO's education section said, it's not enough to just teach them about climate change so that they understand climate change. We must move them to action. So the UN itself is telling you that their agenda to undermine national sovereignty, deindustrialize the Western world, steal all your freedom under the guise of saving the climate, it all runs right through the classroom. It depends on them capturing the hearts and minds of your children. But as long as you have millions of American children in Oklahoma and Texas and Florida and South Carolina and other states being educated at home, getting a good, solid Christian education, learning logic and history and science, their agenda is at risk. And so they're now just coming out of the closet and saying, you can't keep doing that. We're going to tell you what to do, when to do, how to do it. And if you don't like it, you're violating the human rights of your child, and we will destroy you.
And how do you think certain states like my state of Tennessee, your state of Florida, are going to handle this?
Well, this is a touchy subject, and people always get mad at me when I talk about it. So don't shoot the messenger, but I've got the UN documents proving this. Their plan is to give you free money to buy your compliance. And I tell people, just think about it like putting cheese in a mousetrap. Right? The mouse doesn't know better. He sees cheese and it's free. It's, oh, free cheese. And then you go and you get the cheese and boom, now you're trapped in the mousetrap. You can't get out. That is the UNESCO plan for bringing us all under control, and I've got the documents proving it. In 2022, they put out the Global Education Monitoring Report, and the whole purpose of it was to figure out how to have the government take control of what they call non-state education providers. And the answer is very simple. We'll give them free tax money, and then we'll tell them what to do. We'll impose non-discrimination in hiring and admissions. We'll impose testing requirements. We'll enforce curricular mandates. We will force them to obey the standards that we choose. And so that's what they're planning to do in the Republican states, where they couldn't, the political class here could not just come out and say, oh, we're going to take away your freedom to homeschool. We're going to spy on you as you homeschool. We're going to treat you as guilty until proven innocent. And so they say, oh, we're just going to give you free money. And then in exchange, we are conservatives, right? We all recognize you don't just hand out public money willy-nilly. You got to have some accountability. We don't want the money being used to, say, create madrasas that are going to teach children jihad, do we? Well, no. So, of course, we got to have some controls over where that money is going. And before long, they will control what you do in your homeschool if you're allowed to homeschool. So that's their plan. It's going to take longer, obviously, in Florida and Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma than it will in New York or Illinois or whatever. But they have a plan for us, and they've been very, very clear about how they're going to go about that.
So anything you want to tell us about the COP 30? How did it end, by the way?
Well, they unveiled, and I don't know if I got to share this with you, Brandon, but they unveiled the guardian spirit of the COP, and it was a big statue. If Logan's there, you can go to my X page. You'll see I've got the photo of this guardian spirit pinned to the top. It is a hideous creature. The CCP donated it. They said it was the fusion of the Chinese dragon spirit with the Brazilian jaguar spirit coming together. There it is right there for those who are watching us. You see the guardian spirit there. And you see it is supposed to be a dragon jaguar guardian spirit. It actually looks like a demon to me with the big devil horns and the sharp fangs and clutching the whole world in his hands, and the peace doves are flying off like, get me out of here. So that was the official guardian spirit of the COP. And I think it was a perfect summary of what was going on there, Brandon. A lot happened. The final agreement included a carbon budget where they said we've already burned through 4/5 of our carbon budget. And obviously the U.S. has used more than its fair share, so we'll leave a lot for China and India and Brazil. They came up with a side agreement to phase out fossil fuels. 86 plus governments agreed to that. A lot of close U.S. allies signed the Declaration on Information Integrity to censor us. But for me, one of the big stories, and we've got a cover story on this in the next issue of the New American, so I hope people will stay tuned for that. Get a subscription if you're not subscribed yet. For me, the big story was how we're watching in slow motion now the repaganization of the world. One of the big themes was indigenous knowledge and wisdom is the key to saving the climate. And so they had all these Indians, indigenous peoples from the Amazon rainforest come in there with the headdresses, and they're literally like opening up UN events with prayers to the forest spirits and the river spirits and the rock spirits. And apparently Mother Earth and Father Sky are very mad at us for not caring about our carbon footprint. And so now we need to somehow placate these deities. And the underlying superstition here is that Christianity is the cause of all environmental problems. This was articulated very clearly back in the 60s by Lynn White, professor at Stanford, Yale or Princeton and UCLA. He argued that Christianity was anthropocentric. You know, we have this crazy idea that God created us in his image. We have this crazy idea from Genesis that he gave the earth to man, that we are to have dominion over the fish and the seas and the land and the animals. Can't have that. And that's the reason, he said, for the ecological crisis. And so now, very clearly, for the UN, the solution is all the religions of the world unite, and we move back toward a pagan understanding where humans are kind of like cockroaches. We're just one part of this, wonderful Mother Earth goddess of Gaia, and it's irresponsible for us to sin through carbon emissions, but we can offset our sins. We can buy carbon indulgences. If we give them enough money, we can apparently break our way out of purgatory, which is what Bill Gates does. So there's a very dark spiritual agenda here. There's a very dangerous political and economic agenda, and I would encourage people to get informed on this. Yes, the Trump administration boycotted the summit, and that may or may not have been a good move, but they were pleased with this. In fact, multiple bigwigs at this summit said, hey, it's great that Trump's not here. Then he can't be a disturbance. He can't block agreement by consensus. So that's their plan. They're sticking to it. Brainwashing your children, they said openly over and over again, is the key to the success of their strategy. And so if you don't want a one world political, totalitarian, economic, and religious system to emerge out of this, or at least if you don't want it to emerge with your consent, you better start getting informed on this, and you better start speaking out.
Absolutely. Let me give that quote you mentioned by Lynn White. Here it is. Look, quote, what we do about ecology depends on our ideas of the man-nature relationship. More science and more technology are not going to get us out of the present ecological crisis until we find a new religion or rethink our old one. As we now recognize, somewhat over a century ago, science and technology joined to give mankind powers which are out of control. If so, Christianity bears a huge burden of guilt. Our science and technology have grown out of Christian attitude towards man's relationship to nature. No new set of basic values has been accepted in our society to displace those of Christianity. Hence, we shall continue to have a worsening ecological crisis until we reject the Christian axiom that nature has no reason for existence save to serve man. By destroying pagan animism, Christianity made it possible to exploit nature in a mood of indifference to the feelings of natural objects. The spirits in natural objects, which formerly had protected nature from man, evaporated. In quote, that pagan animism for the new viewer is the idea of spirit beings, as he just described later, in creation. Think of Mother Earth, Gaia, earth worship, Father Sky, right? Pantheism, all is God. Panentheism, God is in all. Which you see, by the way, in a lot of Disney films and other films, you see that kind of concept or taught. Native American paganism teaches that as well.
Exactly. And, people need to understand this. This is a really significant part of what's happening here. This is an effort to repaganize the world, to eliminate the influence of the biblical worldview on the planet, to undermine Christian civilization to the point where it can be collapsed into the New World Order. And it all runs right through these climate summits, folks. The climate isn't like a sideshow. It is the foundational pretext for this entire edifice of global tyranny that they are building. And the only reason you're not hearing about it is because they know Americans don't believe it. And the more they talk about it, the more mad Americans get, and the more likely they are to call their congressman and to demand an end to this foolishness. So pay attention, folks. It's not a future hypothetical threat. It's here now, and they're still making progress even under the presidency of Donald Trump.
So in closing, what do you see coming for 2026? Based on all the trends, what do you see coming for 2026?
I think it's going to be a wild ride, Brandon. I think we're very likely to see escalating unrest, escalating amounts of violence in our streets, serious economic problems. I don't know whether they'll pull the plug on the economy in 2026, but I think it's possible. I think anytime between now and 2028 is very likely. But I think we're going to see escalating amounts of chaos and maybe even the unveiling of this poly crisis that they've been talking about for so long, where you deal with some combination of major crises, public health, economic, civil war, possibly even Third World War. So I think we're moving in that direction, and I think 2026 is going to bring us closer to many of those things, if not into the hottest part of the action.
And you saw the cover, of course, of The Economist magazine.
Yo, The Economist. Yep, we talked about it. Unbelievable.
Let me show it again real quick for those who didn't see it. Let's see here. They have, where'd the cover go, guys? Let me go back one. There it is. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, all that garbage they put over there. But anyway, there it goes. What you see is, I don't know if Logan's got a better one. I don't want to try a free trial, guys. But what you see there is, you see a chart right where the swords are. It looks like a dollar chart. It even has Lincoln on the coins, and then all the money falling down off the chart. So it looks like they're predicting maybe a dollar collapse in their issue cover for the World Ahead 2026. I mean, I'm just reading what's on the. You've probably studied this now since we've talked about it, right?
Yeah, it sure looks like it, Brandon. And, you go back and you look at the Economist magazine cover back in 1988, I believe it was, where you had the burning pile of dollars giving way to this phoenix and the one world currency. Folks, they're getting ready to pull the plug on the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar. So be as ready as you can be spiritually and physically and financially.
Yeah, there's the cover of the Economist magazine from back in 1988.
Yeah,
and it's the phoenix rising out of a pile of burning world currencies. Do you think
get ready for world currency?
You think Trump is going to lose the midterms big time?
Historically, the party in power always gets pummeled in the midterm immediately after the presidential election. So whatever the president's party is historically has been punished. He's got a very narrow margin in the House, very narrow margin in the Senate. So I think there's a good chance the Republican Party loses the Congress, especially with so many Republicans demoralized about some of what Trump is doing. It's going to be difficult already to overcome, just historical trends. So I would expect that we're probably, unless we get the voting fraud fixed, I would expect that we're probably going to see some pretty big wins for Democrats.
And even so, Lord Jesus, quickly come, and night shall
Amen.
be no more, because it's really ramping up, right?
Yeah.
All right,
Absolutely.
we pray for your safety as well as that of all of our broadcast partners, because, in conclusion here, Alex, Annie Cyrus and I have already seen certain people that used to be out here with us speaking, talking very hard on Islam and accurately on Islam. They've added to their family. Some of them have gotten married, had children, and everybody has got to do what they feel called to do. But some of our colleagues over the years, they've disappeared. They're gone. They've decided it's too hot. It's just the potential risk is too high. Do you join me in seeing that trend? And you think we're going to see a continuing trend where certain people just stop talking, kind of go into a whole different line of work and kind of disappear?
Yeah, and I've noticed the same thing, Brandon, and I think we're going to see more of it. And I think that really puts them in a place where they're winning, right? The evildoers, they want to scare us into submission. They want to silence us by intimidating us and making us fearful. And I think that was one of the reasons why we all got to see Charlie Kirk's assassination over and over again on endless loop on every social media channel. I think it's why when they murdered Gary Webb, the journalist, they did it so brazenly with 2 bullets to the head and called it a suicide. I think they are trying to scare all of us into silence, and that should motivate us, I think, even more to speak loudly and truthfully with love.
Indeed. LibertySentinel.org. Here is his website right here. libertysentinel.org. Alex Newman, broadcaster, journalist, and talk show host. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Really appreciate it.
You too, my friend. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
We'll be right back after this short break, folks. Do you appreciate all the free programming we produce here at Worldview Tube? Well, if you do, we need your partnership now. If you're already supporting us, thank you. If you're not, would you please consider doing so? We have to have a big November and December end of the year giving. Please go here right now to this website, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You can give through credit card. You can give through PayPal. You'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find our phone number. Simply use that phone number by leaving a voicemail for Melissa or texting her, and my wife will get back with you and help you make your contribution over the phone. We send out tax receipts with our EIN number, well, the first week of February of each year. We, again, have to have a very big November and December as we get ready for pushing out more Christian worldview programming for 2026. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Joining me now is Matt Tardio. He's a former veteran. He's also a broadcaster in his own right. He joins us now. Matt, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me again.
Here's a headline that we've been discussing tonight from Revolver. Disturbing details emerge. Was Brown you another Charlie Kirk style assassin? We already played tonight the audio and video from Mark Alperin, who he says people are telling me that the Brown University attack was targeting Ella Cook, a prominent conservative on campus. She's also described in some publications right here, Life News. Brown University shooting victim Ella Cook remembered as a conservative Christian. And then you put out today on your X account that there seems to be plenty of footage. Here you go. Here's you. Brown University shooting. There's a security camera directly outside the most probable entrance that the shooter would have used. Was this not activated? Tell me what you think's going on here.
Yeah, it certainly appears at this point, when I take a look at the security footage that they did release from the route that the shooter had walked, that he was definitely cased in the area. It looks like the day before, but that the shooter also avoided the target building itself. So he knew this incident was going down there in that particular building. Witness statements came out. One guy said that he heard 5 shots being fired inside of the building. Another witness says that the shooter walked in, locked eyes with him, and immediately, just started shooting. There is information that says that she was shot in the face and that her family had came out and stated that, the law enforcement authorities have told them that she was, in fact, the target of the attack. Just moments ago, I think maybe an hour-ish ago, announcements started to come out that a Jewish professor from MIT, which is about an hour and 15 minutes or so away from Brown University, was shot in his home on Monday night. He just died in the hospital this morning. What I see when I look at this situation here is that there is a growing issue inside of the United States of America. This, to me, is definitely a targeted attack that ended up taking place over at Brown University. There's not a doubt in my mind that this was a targeted attack, likely from somebody that was affiliated with the university in some way, either a professor, intern, student, somebody that was very close, and also that they got out of there pretty quick. So they're well familiar with the area. They didn't need to case the building itself, but they needed to look at like the potential areas and the routes out of that area. And even had it confirmed just a few hours ago that there's a particular building that's about 200-meter walk away from the building itself where the shooting went down, where they had heavy police presence just the other day, and it's since been reduced down to 1 officer. So that's indicative that they're walking down a crime scene and trying to control it. So it is potential that individual that's pictured right there in that video was, affiliated with that building as well, or that they're pulling more evidence out of that location. They're just waiting potentially for warrants. I have no idea what it is that they have going on, but this individual, in my opinion, is definitely affiliated with there, had an intent to go in there and to shoot that at least Ella. And I feel like the other people were innocent bystanders.
The other people were innocent bystanders. Very interesting. Do you think this is something related to Iran, if you had to guess?
No. I don't think it's related to Iran. I think it has to do with how we've been pushing the radical Palestinian agenda here in the United States of America, the radical Muslim agenda here in the United States of America. Those people that tend to go on the side of Palestine, just like we saw over in LA yesterday, with the announcement of the radical group that's affiliated with the pro-Palestinian movement that planned on planting 5 separate IEDs outside of 2 separate buildings. Again, violent pro-Palestinian group looking to globalize the Intifada. And that's what they've been out there shouting and saying on the streets. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this ended up taking place what is it, 10 hours or so before the attack over in South Australia. I really don't. I think that this is a targeted attack, and then the incident from Monday night likely was targeted as well. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they were connected.
Did you have a chance to read, if you go over to worldviewtube.com, did Logan send you my article today under news?
I don't believe he did.
Okay, here it is right here. The Turtle Island Liberation Front. If you go to worldviewtube.com, then click on the news. The Turtle Island Liberation Front, a frontline assault in the worldview war against America. And what I basically did is I talked about this group that is really, it looks like a Marxist organization that is very much, I think, and I write about it in the article, similar to the Weather Underground that I've written about and talked about for so many years. Here's their 1974 manifesto, Prairie Fire, where in this document, they're praising Mao Zedong, the CCP. They're praising the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO. They're talking about colonization. The same rhetoric we hear coming out of this group, the Turtle Island Liberation Front group. I talk about in the article La Raza, a group that I've been warning about on my website since 2008. They're basically things California, New Mexico, Arizona, all need to go back to Mexico. We've got to give that land back. Yep. It seems like what we have now is, as Andy and I were talking about, Andy Cyrus on radio today, is a not just the red-green axis, the red being the Marxists, the green being the Islamists, but what she says comes out of Iran many years ago, which is now a black-green. The black is everybody, not just the Marxists, but now we're going to add in anyone and everyone, the LGBTQ agenda, the feminist groups, the immigrant groups, the fascist groups, the Nazi groups, the Marxist groups. So you don't have to be the red, a Marxist. You add it to a black-green axis. And what she is warning about, as well as even Kash Patel has warned about these groups that he is referring to as nihilistic, violent extremist. And basically you get the green, the Islamist, to do some of the attacks. You get some of the black to do some of the attacks. Some of the black might attack the enemies of the Islamists. Some of the Islamists might attack some of the enemies of the black side. And you might even attack people and then yell out, a common Arabic phrase to confuse the living daylights everybody as to who was really doing it behind it. But it seems though this is really ramped up. When you start looking at what happened with Charlie Kirk, what we have with the killing of the 2 young people coming out of the building there in D.C. at a Jewish event who were Messianic Jews, according to people that we've interviewed, one who had dinner with the young lady, people that knew the young man said he had converted to Christianity, was a Messianic Jew. We have the killing of this Ella Cook. I mean, we just keep going down the line of people that are being taken out. And it appears to be, though, whether it's also, again, the Islamist attacks in America, this would-be attack that was foiled, what's going on in Australia, there seems to be there's an orchestrated now plan on global scale that's obviously here in America as well. What do you make of this? That someone has pulled the pen, somehow, someone gave a video or something that was a triggering message to let these begin and to escalate. And do you think they're going to escalate? So you're looking at, the Hanukkah obviously starting this weekend, and then are they going to escalate? The answer is yes. They are going to continue to escalate. The United States government opened up something called the Foreign Malign Influence Center to keep track on such a thing. Iran has been named as such an organization that's contributing to providing mis and disinformation in the United States of America. So is Russia, so is China. So we're aware that they're doing these things here in the United States. And what they'll do is they'll find some hot button topic that's over here in the United States of America that's already divisive. And this goes pretty much in any,
how do you want to say it? Like psychological operations manual that's out there. You find a void and you find an issue in that particular area that you want to destabilize, and you just pour fuel on that fire, right? You just sit there and you just pump it and you pour fuel on it. And as we've seen across social media, whether it be TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook, even like across all of these different platforms, what we're seeing is a bunch of different accounts that are coming out and they're pushing a certain agenda, and certain accounts, guys such as, oh Lord, what's his name? The guy that started the GoPro movement, Nick Fuentes. Right. You look at the ratios that are on his account and they're being pumped up. Right. So he's got certain bots that are going in and actually trigger them. And at the same time, they're using lesser bots that the system can detect that's actually suppressing kind of like the conservative side of the narrative. And a lot of the liberal narrative that's being pushed out there, especially when it comes to the Palestinian and the Muslim movement and all of that stuff, a lot of it is false misinformation and, more importantly, disinformation for what's coming out. So they're not even twisting the narrative. They're flat out lying about what the narrative is. And our foreign adversaries know that they can't beat us in a head-on-head war, right? They know a near-peer conflict they're going to lose any day of the week, whether that be Russia, China, or Iran. They don't stand a chance, right? But what they do know is that they can do things such as this and destabilize us from within and essentially collapse the country. And so when you're talking about the US dollar being weak, when you're talking about what's going on in the gold and silver market right now, when you're talking about all of these other things, these are signs that the United States is very unstable in the dollar. And then when we have this political divide and we have these different things that are going on, these different targeted attacks that are taking place, and they ended up getting pumped up and pushed out, that also starts to embolden people that might not act. You take a look at, some of the people, it certainly appears as if there's a transgender on the list from the Turtle Island Liberation Front. Charlie Kirk shooter looked like he was in love with possibly a transgender individual. And we can go on and on as we go through this. I saw a picture of the potential suspect from Brown University, and it looks very similar. And again, pro-Palestinian, potentially, I'm using the word potentially here, potentially transgender. And what these people do is they get recruited online. And by the way, the January 6th pipe bomber as well, when we take a look at that individual. And so this is something that's been going on for a very long period of time. They take these disenfranchised people and they pump them full of propaganda. They pull them over to a certain side where they feel like they're a member of something. They give them a bunch of disinformation. And once they get them off to the side, then they're able to easily start pushing them some more of this radical stuff. And depending on how they respond to that, they might start tasking them out, or they might link them up with other people. And all of this can be done from, thousands of miles away.
What do you make of this new footage? I guess we've got new footage out now. Investigators have released reportedly new footage. Let's see what we got here. New video image of person of interest. Here we go. ABC News. Here we go.
Authorities sharing new surveillance videos and the clearest images yet of a person of interest in the Brown University mass shooting.
The sooner we can identify that person, the sooner we can, I think, blow this case open. But that's work that has to happen in the next 24 to 36 hours.
The individual seen here just hours prior to Saturday afternoon's deadly rampage, masked and wearing dark clothing, crossing the street in a residential area near campus. Later that day, police say a gunman armed with a 9mm handgun entered the Barris and Holly Engineering Building and fired more than 40 rounds into a lecture hall as dozens of students were studying for finals. 2 students killed, 8 others remain hospitalized.
We want to see the individual that pulled the trigger on these young kids.
All right, now I don't want to name any names because I don't need a lawsuit. But there is a picture of a guy I think he's wearing a keffiyeh, and apparently, according to news reports, that the Brown University is deleting articles and different things about this individual. Again, I don't want to name him because I don't want to get sued. Let's let let it develop and see what happens. But what do you make of this? Are you hearing that there are articles and things by individual being deleted off the Brown University website? Is that true or false?
That's true. He is deleted off the university website. His X account was also taken down along with several others. And not only was he wearing a keffiyeh, it looks like the body mass and the height kind of aligns with the individual that they ended up showing in those security videos, along with the fact that the individual was wearing glasses. So I think there's a lot of weight to that accusation.
And obviously, if we're talking about it, the police know about it, right?
Oh, fact. Yeah. Yeah. And I've got pictures of him in a pro-Palestinian rally and several other things, which is why I say he might actually be transgender, because I saw something that made me think that.
Okay. And again, we're not accusing anyone. We're not naming anyone. We're just talking about it in general terms. These are our opinions and our beliefs and commentary. Right. So trying to cover ourselves legally. Let's see as this flushes out. What else are you watching in conclusion here? What do you want to tell the listening audience about 2026? What, as a person from military background, knowing the enemies that are here, the cells that are here, we still don't know where these 60 to 100,000 Chinese military-age males are. We got what's going on in Venezuela. That seems to be an awful lot, not so much about drugs to me. Maybe you think it is. I think it's more about
Russia
Iran.
and
China. Right, exactly.
Russia, China, and Iran.
Exactly, all being there right in our backyard. What do you anticipate for 2026?
I participate the propaganda increase, which is going to cause more attacks like we're currently seeing. The reason I think that is because Trump is a very polarizing person, and that it's very easy to provide misinformation, disinformation. AI is taking off to a level that we've never seen before. Even with the shooting over at Bondi Beach, we saw within 24 hours, we saw fake information, fake photos coming out of what was purported to be crisis actors, putting on makeup and Band-Aids and pouring blood on them. And they're all AI generated photos. None of that happened. There was a narrative to be pushed that it wasn't Muslims that were targeting Jews. And that's completely and totally false. There's a Jewish celebration that was taking place on the grass right there. They have it every single year. And it was about 50 to 75 meters away from where the shooters were standing at any, given point in time. And so things like that, the narratives like that are going to continue to get pushed in order to divide the country. You got to understand, the goal of these attacks has absolutely nothing to do with, instilling fear in people in the United States of America. And it has everything to do with pushing our politicians and pushing the citizens of this country to divide further, to shut our government down, to throw us deeper in debt, and to cause chaos and confusion while they continue to do things, behind our backs. India, for example. Good old member of BRICS. India, for example, ended up cashing on a bunch of silver certificates this last month over at the LBMA, and the United States government COMEX ended up having to fly silver out there in order to keep them from defaulting. You look at the LBMA or you look at COMEX defaulting on something like that, U.S. dollar's done. We've got huge issues when that happens, and they're doing this stuff. They're doing it on a wide scale. So I think their goal is to keep our attention here on the home front. I think their goal is to keep us divided here on the home front so that they can continue to do the operations they're doing.
Here's some footage. FBI have just released new timeline video footage detailing the movements of a suspect that they want to talk to. This is like a 6.5 minute video, so we won't watch the whole thing. But apparently they're releasing all of this video. You would think, by the way, with the way the person is walking, their gait. I mean, I've read for years that your gait, the way you walk, is very unique to you, just like a fingerprint.
Correct.
You would. Is that true? Is that a true statement?
That's a very true statement if you think about it. Well, I mean, guys in the military, we're used to being around the same people all the time, and we see people walking with night vision on. We can pick them out from a mile away and be able to tell exactly who they are. But yeah, that gait is very, very unique to him for his body mass and everything else that he has going on. The length of his legs, the length of his torso, all of that. It's very, very unique to the individual. So it's almost like you said, like a fingerprint.
Mm-hmm. So you anticipate they'll have an arrest probably pretty soon. Is that what you're thinking?
No. I think it might take him a while to find the guy. I think he skipped town and he's moving, but they're going to catch him. It's just going to take some time.
All right. Anything else that you want to bring to the attention of the audience that you're covering and talk about on your show or your different socials or Substack that I haven't asked you about?
No, sir, not that I can think of. Just focusing heavily back here on the homeland because of all the different terrorism stuff that's going on back here. I wouldn't want people to be afraid of the Afghans that are back here in the United States. Let the U.S. government do its job. Let them figure it out. I don't think the Afghans are going to end up, being deported at large. But I do know that there was a fair amount that ended up coming into this country that shouldn't have been here, that had photocopied paperwork from somebody else, and the State Department ended up just kind of like looking over it and throwing them out into society. But a lot of those guys, people such as myself had signed our name to and said, these are good, honest human beings and they deserve to be in this country. And I think those individuals that we signed our names to, should have an opportunity to live here in the United States. They've proven themselves, certainly to myself and my friends, but the people that ended up lying and working their way over here, they're a threat, they're a danger. It's a huge issue. Don't just assume that every single one of them are terrorists. It's just simply not the case. A lot of them are good, hardworking human beings that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, on the ground over there for this country. And if we signed our name to them, they're good people. The other people that ended up working their way in here, I have no idea who they are, and I want them gone.
What should families be doing to prepare for what you think is coming on our soil?
For what's coming? Look for truth and look for, what I would do is I would look for truth, look for information. And, as far as preparing goes, I'm a Christian. I think, keep heavy in the faith. Whatever happens is going to happen. It's going to be all right at the end of the day. But to keep your family safe and everybody else safe, if you're preparing for it right now, it's probably too late. Just to be perfectly honest, I would never recommend anybody could just go out and buy a firearm and carry it around if you don't have the proper amount of training. A lot of the times you're going to end up doing a lot more damage than good. But just do basic things, lock your doors, pay attention out in public. If you don't have to be, don't be around large crowds, keep an eye on your surroundings, pay attention to your surroundings, right? Paying attention to your surroundings is going to be 10 times more effective than anything else. I call it proactive self-defense. And so if you are proactively looking out for yourself, you're proactively paying attention to the area that you're in. If you're going into Walmart, if you're going into a shopping center, if you're going to a fair, take a good, honest look around it. Go do some research on the internet. Make sure that you're not driving into the middle of a anti-ICE rally or pro-Palestinian rally or anything of that nature. Just stay clear from all of that stuff. There's no need to be anywhere around it. Just take a little bit extra time, 5 minutes out of your day before you decide to go somewhere, and double check on all these different events. Like
we have when we promote satellite phones, we promote solar generators, we promote and have freeze-dried food, water filters, basic stuff in case there's interruption. You agree with all that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Having a good ability to get water, having food on hand, things of that nature. If COVID taught you anything is when people go into panic mode, it's not really the system that's going to end up shutting down, that's going to cause harm to you. It's people going into panic. So I would just advise people not to panic and be kind, right? Be kind to your neighbor, be kind to those around you. What we saw during COVID was absolutely disgusting. People just going in and hoarding baby formula, hoarding even everything down to, hand sanitizer, charging $80 a bottle on eBay, things of that nature. I mean, don't do those things, right? Just be a good human being. You're going to be okay. The system is going to continue to work and you will get by.
All right. Excellent advice. Here is his X account. Follow him at AngerTab, Matt Tardio, former military special forces guy and now a broadcaster and great guest all around. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me again.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Matt Tardio checking in. Follow him on X at AngerTab, and we'll be right back after this short break. Do you know about glutathione? You can't live without it. It's a naturally occurring ingredient in your body. But guess what? It starts to decrease around the age of 20. You need glutathione. There are over 165,000 studies on glutathione at PubMed. It detoxes your cells. And we know there are toxins everywhere. In fact, studies have shown glutathione may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Check it out at swishforlife.com. You just put a small 2 caps in your mouth, swish it for about 3 minutes. Then you can swallow it or spit it out. Studies show that this is in your bloodstream within 90 seconds. It's better than an IV. That'll cost you about $250, and it's broken down. But when you swish with it, it is in your body in 90 seconds in its totality. Glutathione, you need it to live. Swishforlife.com. Swishforlife.com. Joining me now is the lead pollster at Rasmussen, Mark Mitchell. He joins us by phone. We could have waited till tomorrow and had him on camera, but there's just too much breaking news. I got to get an update from Mark Mitchell. Hello, Mark.
Yeah, great to be back. Yeah, I guess tomorrow we're going to see that Trump speech. That sounds like it's going to be a really big deal.
What Trump speech are you talking about?
He just came out in the last hour or two and announced that there's going to be a major address tomorrow night. And I'm interested, for one, to hear what he's going to talk about.
Oh, is he going to do it from the Oval Office or what?
Not really sure. I think that's the case. I think that this is a major push to try and prove to America that they're recapturing kind of the narrative, because it does seem like the train's gotten off the track a little bit in the last month or so.
Yeah, think. By the way, I'm barely hearing him in my earpiece. I don't know why. Yeah, it's definitely gotten off track. That's what I want to ask you about, some polling. But here's a guy I quote sometime on X. I don't know how you say his name. Cernovic?
Oh, yeah, Mike Cernovich. Yep.
He's got like 1.4 million followers. I think he was one of the dudes that was handed one of the Epstein binders, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if he was down there or not.
Was he, Logan?
But I follow him. He's really great.
Well, he's like a MAGA guy, right?
Yeah, I would say like in an open-minded, hard right, and without any sort of like affiliation, rah-rah cheerleading.
Okay. What does he mean here? His X account, Logan, he's saying completely degenerate. What is that? What is he? Is he criticizing Trump? He's criticizing him, huh?
Is this about the Rob Reiner?
No, Trump's, I want to get to that. Trump's marijuana move would go far beyond Biden. And it's a Wall Street Journal piece. Trump's marijuana move would go far beyond Biden, plus job numbers for November, October. President Trump criticized Rob Reiner, Nancy Mace's unusual bid, the South Carolina next governor. Yeah. I don't know. You know, that's kind of shocking to me to see that. I mean, completely degenerate from this guy who's got, 1.4 million followers. You know, I think he's been a big MAGA guy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but he is not immune to calling out Trump. Neither am I. You know, I'm in this for America. I'm in this for my kids. I'm in this for the voters. And I want to see this movement succeed, because I think it was kind of founded on the right principles. But then it's like, when we look back, there have definitely been some wins over the last year out of the Trump administration. But fundamentally, kind of seems like there's a mismatch in expectation setting. Like, people in MAGA thought that they were going to get, in many ways, something different than what they have in the last year gotten out of the Trump administration. And when they're looking and what they're seeing is stuff like this and stuff like the Rob Reiner Truth Social post, it raises questions. And so I think Trump has gotten away with a lot over the last 10 years, and people have stuck with him even through some of the things that were sort of questionable. But when it comes at a pivotal moment when people are looking forward and wondering, well, this was a referendum on the federal government. Only 30% trust the federal government. Over 3/4 of voters think the federal agencies still need major reforms. We don't have an American middle class anymore. People think the American dream was stolen from them. That's all different than it was 10 years ago. And so this isn't the kind of country that's just going to sit back and forever tolerate these kind of Rosie O'Donnell sort of posts on Truth Social. I think that there's going to be anger and blowback if there isn't like a real reckoning about what America really needs right now. And that is an actual reformation of the economy and of the federal government. And that's, as I covered with you on your show, the advice I gave them almost a month ago now in the White House. And everything needs to be passed through that filter. We need a wartime president, not somebody who is sort of stoking this increasing temperature of political rhetoric.
Well, I came out really hard. Yes, I shouldn't say I came out really hard. I was very gracious and kind about it, but I was very adamant that I thought his Truth Social post about Rob Reiner was just completely wrong. It was unpresidential. It damages the presidency. It damages the party. It sets us up for more loss in the midterm. It demoralizes the base. And then it was not a good example for the young people in our country. You can disagree with Rob Reiner politically. I said yesterday he's been surrounded by people that have criticized him. I don't think Rob Reiner ever said anything about Trump that wasn't said by some of the people he ended up hiring. His own VP had some pretty harsh things to say about him. I'm not sure Rob Reiner ever said anything any worse than what J.D. Vance said, yet he was apparently able to put that behind him and choose him as VP. So could you not put that behind you at the man's death and simply say, condolences to the family. This is horrific. Many, many families are touched by, children with substance abuse and mental issues. Whatever went on here, I don't know. But, this touches a lot of families and extended families. Pray for his family. And I said, do you realize how far that would have gone for his credibility? He gets handed these great opportunities all the time, and he blows it almost all the time. True or false?
Well, I would say he has a innate knack to control the narrative. And if they wanted America focused on all of the successes out of the Trump administration, they know how to do that. I mean, just think back to January, February, and March. People weren't talking about ridiculous stuff that Trump was putting on Truth Social. People were talking about all the new executive orders that were coming out, all the new discoveries inside the federal government, all the things that were going to get done legislatively. And now it's like there's a vacuum. And so it's like what happens is then America is going to laser focus on what Trump's putting out. And what is Trump putting out? Counterproductive tweets that, I'm sorry, this is going to have an impact. I don't know what it's going to be, but I guarantee you we're probably going to get a little bit of a drop, at least in Trump approval among women for sure. My wife and all the people she knows were freaking out about this. And again, they've seen bad stuff out of Trump, but it's like the timing and the main characterness of it all. This is supposed to be about the American people, and the American people don't want to see somebody making fun of a family where somebody just had their throat slit. Like, it's not good optics at all. No. We're beyond that. This is, like I said, this is a wartime presidency. It needs to be single-mindedly focused on economic war and deep state war.
What do you make of this article? Here's Vanity Fair. I'm showing it on the screen. Got a picture of all the cabinet, bunch of the top dogs around the table there with Wiles. Susie Wiles, J.D. Vance, and the Junkyard Dogs, the White House Chief of Staff on Trump's second term, part 1 of 2. And it said that throughout the first year of Donald Trump's second administration, Vanity Fair writer Chris Whipple has interviewed Wiles. Amid each moment of crisis, the insider's account joins a portfolio of portraits for an unflinching up-close look at power and peril. Yeah. Now, I think according to this, this was done with 11 interviews. I think I just read this was 11 interviews that were done. Are these things normally recorded? And because I guess the White House and some folks are trying to push back against some of this today. Do you think this was all recorded and documented? Because they seem to have quotes around some of these quotes, and some of them aren't very flattering of the administration or the president.
Well, this is interesting. I can give some personal insight here, is that all of these organizations have either systematically ignored Rasmussen reports or targeted us over the years. New York Times funded 538 for a while, and those came after us brutally as an information gatekeeping operation within political polling. Washington Post has sicked their fake fact checkers on us all the time. And believe it or not, after my trip to the Washington, D.C., a Washington Post reporter reached out to me and said, hey, that's kind of interesting that an outsider like that came down to advise the White House. Love to hear about your experience. And they wrote a story about me. I think it came out yesterday. And there were other people in the story, but it was framed as like, hey, some people are giving Trump advice. The White House is listening. And I gave my honest feedback. And I know that they checked in with the White House. They checked in with me prior to publishing it. There was some disagreement about, sort of how I said, because it was a long talk. And I said, well, I don't like the way this is framed. It doesn't really represent how I feel. Then they changed it. And the reason they did is because they want to maintain access. You know what I mean? Like, they might have had ulterior motives. I don't know. But the article, in my opinion, was kind of fair for the Washington Post. Now, you look at the New York Times, and obviously they hate the Trump administration. He called them very fake, back in 2016. And they probably have an axe to grind here, but there are also reporters here, I guess Steve Baker's the guy, who want to, I'm sure they were checking with them and, hey, this is what we're going to post. What do you think about it? And there's maybe horse trading or not, but if you are a scummy journalist and just out and out lie, you're not going to be a very good, effective journalist for long. And so I suspect that there's a significant amount of truth to what is in those articles and in the forthcoming article as well. Now, I don't know if they disingenuously framed it, but some of that stuff is sort of head-scratching. Like, for instance, and again, Susie's one of the people that helped bring me to the White House, so I think she wants Trump to get better advice. I think she's concerned about the American people and making sure the administration succeeds. But one of the things I saw was, she said, there's a 90-day time limit on our retribution. Like, let's take this out, and then we have to move on. Well, that 90-day window was when Trump was polling really well, especially with people under 60. under 40, sorry. They're a 60% job approval rating. And I guess they closed that window and Trump got back to presidency as normal. And I don't think we need a presidency as normal. I think that people were sort of on board with retribution. Maybe you could call it brutal reform, and that's what I asked. I said that we should focus on, because these agencies haven't been fixed. And they wonder why nobody trusts the FBI. Well, I just polled a week and a half ago, and normally what happens is when the party in power gets in, people in that party say, no, the federal government's fine. It doesn't need to be fixed. And now with the Trump administration, Republicans, over 80%, 83% of Trump voters say yes, agencies like the FBI and CIA still need major reform. And so I could point to a ton of things like that show, just from the polling metrics, the deep root cause problems of America haven't been fixed. Like, we don't see increasing trust in the federal government. We still see results like only 17% say the federal government has done enough to stop political violence in America. We remember the Epstein stuff. Only 16% agree that the case was closed. You have over 80% saying these agencies need major reform, and this is even before we're starting to talk about the economic picture. And so that's the problem, is that if you look at the polling back in 2016, we just weren't there. You know, people still thought that there was going to be a middle class for their kids. People still said by a majority that they were better off than they were 4 years ago. That all went out the window now, and Trump wanted to be president. And, you know, we're just not in a scenario where he can do what he did in 2016, which is have Steve Bannon go back and look at all of his stump speeches and write a list of everything he promised and then start checking them off. That's not good enough. Like, we're beyond that transactional stuff. I mean, we asked a question, has Trump done too much of what he promised or not enough of what he promised? And by almost 2-1, Americans say he hasn't done enough of what he promised. The 18 to 29 voters, it was 49% to 19%, the Zoomers. They're like, definitely not. This guy has not given us what we wanted. Half of them say not enough. Only 19% say too much. And, that's a problem. It's going to look like failure. And I don't know what, for under 40 voters particularly, I think these people are just going to vote for the communists to burn this system down and get themselves a political upheaval so that they can get themselves in charge faster. I mean, the way the youth are starting to talk about Trump on the internet is wild. On Twitter and YouTube now, the influencers kind of starting to talk about Trump like he was a big bait and switch. And it's like, then when you come out and you have these Rob Reiner posts where maybe it would have flown 10 years ago, but when people are super concerned about violent leftists shooting them, you know what I mean? Like, I increased my life insurance, Brandon, just in the last month. I don't want political violence stoked. It's not funny to joke about.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's very interesting, because you don't know this, but we've already done interviews on this tonight. And we did it for an hour on radio and TV at 1 o'clock Central. And we were talking about the fact, like this headliner here, disturbing details emerge. Was Brown University another Charlie Kirk style assassin? Here's another one, LifeSite News. Brown University shooting victim Ella Cook, remembered as a conservative Christian. Then we have another headline from the New York Post, if I can find it, that has to, church-going woman suffered burns and random toxic chemical attack while walking at a park. We predicted with some of our guests early 2025 that we were going to start seeing an increased attack on self-described Christians. We said you're going to continue to see the attacks on Jews, but watch as the attacks on Christians start to ramp up. And of course, then we saw it with the murder of Charlie Kirk, and now other people, and now a church-going woman suffers attack of acid, looks like thrown on her or something. Now we have this gal that's killed who was apparently a conservative Christian at Brown. So here you are. I don't think you know what we've talked about tonight, but here we are, and you've upped your life insurance because you're concerned about political violence.
I'm just a pollster. I just ask people questions and report on the results and try and interpret them online. And I had Mark Levin get in Twitter fight with me. Really hostile, like really disingenuous and disgusting things said. And all I'm saying is, yo, bro, you guys aren't helping. It's hurting the numbers on Israel. Like, we talked a lot about this, Brandon. He was insane. And I don't know what kind of people listen to him and what they're willing to do. And then India, I worked in corporate America in a technology company. I've seen the abuse of the H-1B scam firsthand. And this is something that affects tens of millions of Americans. And you know what? On Twitter, there's probably only about 10, 15, 20 of us who talk about this topic. And it's because everybody's brutally scared about what it's going to do to their careers. They're never going to work again, because these Fortune 500 companies are being taken over in the engineering departments by H-1B labor and nepotistic hiring and the pushing of body shops. And it's a scam that runs all the way to the highest levels of the Indian government. And I've already been written up in multiple Indian papers, including the India Times, because of the things that I've said about H-1Bs that I'm doing only in the name of the American voter. And then we just had polling back today. For the first time, a plurality of Trump voters actually support withdrawing from NATO. Meanwhile, you have the NATO head literally slobbering over an impending World War III with Russia. These people want to rebuild some grand European army and throw young men into the meat grinder, and they want Americans there with them. We are seeing the death of the post-World War II, liberal world order. And all of these institutions are going to come crashing down, and there's going to be a big scrambling, I guess, a reordering of these things. And you have young men who are just waiting for it to happen. They can't wait. They can't wait for the old order to die. You're seeing it every day. You're seeing it with Pierce Morgan just getting completely torn up by Nick Fuentes. You're seeing people rebel against the Trump administration online because he wasn't radical enough. These people are begging, and all of them know, but this is where the right is going.
Well, let me just stop you for a minute, because you're saying this is where the right is going. You're saying there are people who voted for him that don't think President Trump is going far enough. He's not cutting the size of government, restoring the economy, dealing with inflation, dealing with housing. Our jobs are being, as you say, taken, and I agree with you, by H-1B visa people. He's saying we need these people to hear the American people aren't smart enough for these jobs. I'm kind of paraphrasing. But we find out later those are entry-level jobs. We need 600,000 Chi-Coms in here to prop up the Marxist, woke, DEI, cultural Marxist schools. I mean, all this crazy talk. What's that?
Like Brown. Brown has, according to Grok, 10 to 15% international students, of which over 60% apparently are Chinese foreign nationals. So these Chinese students are propping up these Marxist institutions like Brown University, where you have young conservative leaders getting gunned down and targeted. It's really wild. And then
let me just add in real quick here for you to continue your phrase, your conversation with me. But you said something about basically you described to me how there are people on the right getting really, really frustrated that Trump's not going far enough. But then you have the people on the left. And I just released an article today called The Turtle Island Liberation Front, subtitled A Frontline Assault in the Worldview War Against America. And I talked about this group that apparently was planning all kinds of attacks on New Year's Eve, according to the government. And this Turtle Island, they are not so much just a pro-Palestinian group. When I go to their website, and I can even cite the New York Post here, we see their literature. Death to America, long live Turtle Island in Palestine, death to ICE. This seems to me more like a cultural Marxist group that is just tuned into the Palestinian movement because they see Israel as occupiers, as being involved in genocide, colonization, just like they do America, that we've stolen the land from the indigenous people. This is no different than the Weather Underground, and I've been holding up all night the Weather Underground's manifesto from 1974, Prairie Fire. Well, Bill Ayers and others were praising the Palestinian Liberation Organization, talking about Mao Zedong and burning down the capitalist system, if you will. This is not new. What this liberation, our Turtle Island Liberation Front, this group is not new. This is the same worldview. It's just a different time. And then we had this movie by Leonardo DiCaprio called One Battle After. It was about going after ICE people and these kind of domestic terrorists. We played the trailer. I don't know. That's kind of predictive programming. You got a movie out and you got this group planning these things. I don't know what's going on. But the point I'm trying to make here is it seems as though you have an extreme element on the left merging with Islamist, and then you've got this group on the right that's super frustrated. It seems as though the stage is set to bring about conflict. So how does this fit into your concerns and your warnings the last few months to us about a potential civil war?
Well, we haven't pulled on civil war yet, but I feel like conflict is probably coming sooner rather than later. I don't even know what question to ask. I mean, we would probably see an increase in the number of people who said a civil war is likely. There's a ridiculous number of people. I think it was 74% of under 40 voters, off the top of my head, I think, who thought that there was going to be increasing political violence over the next couple of months. Don't quote me on that one, but it was high. And especially the under 40 voters, they think that more of this is coming. But if you look at just like ideologically, you don't see the left really waxing philosophical about all of the policies and what is the right, way to order society. And what's been kind of interesting is that there's just been a steady drift among Democrats of increasing socialist identification as opposed to moderates. So you go back to like the Bill Clinton years, you'd see a lot of moderate Democrats. And increasingly, they're just becoming more openly socialist. Now, they're going to run on that because it helps them get into power, and then they're going to just do whatever the heck they want. And they're not embracing, they're definitely embracing their fringe, and they've been openly violent against conservatives for years now with Antifa, right? And letting people off disproportionately that attack conservatives, and the way that they've been targeting young white men in the corporate America, and the way that all of the sort of liberal messaging definitely subverts like traditional patriarchal stuff. Like this is where they're going, and we've seen it. Now, if you look at the right, the Republicans have always had a very high conservative ID. So it's like almost 80% of people who call themselves Republicans also call themselves conservative. And, there's a whole world in the independents, and we don't have to get into that. But the problem is that, like, what does conservative even mean? It's changing. It doesn't mean the same things. And what it kind of is sort of meant is like economic libertarianism with a smattering of like classical liberalism with all this egalitarian stuff. And that has kind of been conservatism for a very long time. It's established. It's what everybody in Washington, D.C. would call conservatism. And this is kind of what there's a backlash against, which is really interesting to see. And I watch a lot of young people on Twitter talk about YouTube talk about politics. I think it's fascinating because they think very differently, and they think that that's all like loser talk. They call it the conservatives beautiful losers because they've conserved nothing, and they've helped exacerbate a system that is amoral. And so a lot of older people, a lot of people who are traditional conservatives look at this younger generation with trepidation and say, these people have no values. We're going to a dark place. Like conflict is going to be bad. And yet when you hear a lot of these people talk, it's almost like they feel like they have the moral imperative to burn the system down because they think the system is amoral. They don't like the idea of fake egalitarianism being used in order to, all these social justice things, the way that their society is crumbling because of white replacement and the job offshoring and the way the corporate capture with the government works, like all of these things that we've seen, the complete capture of the judicial system and the way it's created a two-tier system of justice. And this is the problem I think we're staring at. And the thing with public opinion is you never know how it's going to break, but when it does, you can look back and say, oh, well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm looking at X, Y, and Z right now and trying to figure out, like, in a year from now, what will America think about what we've been put through for the last 12 or months or so? And what I'm afraid of is that in the next year, people are going to realize that we can't really vote ourselves out of this mess. Because the economic situation, I think the Trump administration is looking at that and saying, well, there's possibly some good news. maybe the economy will be really good next year and we'll be rewarded for it in the ballot box. And maybe not, though. I see a lot of corporate layoffs. I see increasing subprime delinquencies. I see talk of maybe a housing market collapse. And that actually might be okay, the housing market collapse. But just looking at the way every asset's overbid and the way the market's working right now, I don't know if I would take the over-under there. Like, who the heck knows what the economy is going to look like? And if you can't run on the economy, you have to run on other accomplishments. You know, you can tell people, well, it's going to be a golden age finally when people break ground on all these factories in 3 years, but that's not necessarily enough to get you to win. And so, well, the other thing is this whole reform of this government system that's failed us. And look, they basically tried to arrest one person, James Comey. And how's it going? Like, not that great. You have these judges throwing out the evidence. You have the mistrials or whatever. The case is not going to get filed, and you have Trump lawyers getting kicked out of their spots, and it's just a complete mess. And so our justice system is immoral. It doesn't work. It's failed. We're a banana republic. And what is more ethical, to bring attention to that so that the system can be burned down and fixed faster, or to extend and pretend? And the conservatives would say, well, we need to kick the can. We need to maintain business stability. We need to just keep this all together as long as we can. And that is not the increasing younger right mentality. And it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, they're starting to influence older generations. I get a lot of Gen X people in my replies who are like, yeah, this is screwed. Like, it all has to come crashing down. And, maybe you'll finally get people on the right thinking like accelerationists, like people on the left. They've been undermining these. This has been part of their plan. This is a color revolution. We all know it. And the right just hasn't been on the battlefield. Well, right now, the movers and shakers on the right, these young people, these influencers, they are on the battlefield now. They're saying, well, you're derelict. You're MIA. You're AWOL. You're not fighting this battle. I can't wait for you to go away so we can fight it for you. And you're going to see this. It's going to be wild. Congress is only 14% Gen Z and millennial right now, and it's 60% boomer, I think. And there's even a bunch of silence. I think there's more silent generation people in the Senate, at least, than there are millennials, or it's pretty close. Well, what's that going to look like in 5 or 10 years? The writing's on the wall. You're going to get your Zoomers and your millennials in, and it's already starting to make crazy stuff. I've been watching this James Fishback guy that's running against Byron Donalds in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's got a shot or not, but he is getting a lot of traction online, and it's just obvious stuff. It's just like, oh, the systems doesn't work. I'm going to fix it, and this is how we're going to fix it. We're going to get rid of all these people who are stealing your jobs. And that resonates with people. And is that right wing? I don't know, but it's what people on the right, especially young people, want, which is, okay, finally we're reordering a system that has been weaponized against us, and it's the moral thing to do. They're going to have the moral high ground, and they're not going to want to hear, I've watched all these videos, they're not going to want to hear about tears about the Constitution and constitutional crises. They already think we're here. When you see the president get arrested for fake crimes.
Right. Well, what are you going to do when you elect? What do you do when they elect these people to go and shake up the system and put us back under a constitutional republic, get rid of all the illegals, the H-1B visa people, all the student visas, 600,000 Chi-Coms and and everything else. And those guys get to D.C. and they roofie their drink and put them in a compromising position and take their pictures. Game over. Or they maybe don't have to do that. They just make sure whatever is their appetite is, which I'm sure by then, the time they get to Washington, they know what their appetite is. And whatever is on their preferred menu is what they end up being given, voila, on video. To me, you can elect all the good people all day long, but a lot of people have Achilles heels, and they know right where they are to cut them, and then those people are captured.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think a lot of that happens for sure. I think that the corporate capture by lobbyists is the bigger problem by far, by lobbyists, by foreign influences, by basically just any influence, right? And just because I've kind of seen how decision-making works down there, and it's like the think tanks, in my opinion, there are some good ones, But having seen MAGA and sort of like how it works, it's like you got Trump, he's just running the presidency, and it's not really a party apparatus. And they're not really plugging in a whole lot of pre-prepared policy because most of this policy doesn't benefit Americans. It's like, how can we benefit companies while screwing Americans the least so that we can get it through and still stay in power? And that's how most of the decision making gets done. I think
that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing what you just said. I hope people understood what you just said. It's really the corporations that are running, and the bankers and the corporations are running the country.
Yeah, and foreign influence operations as well. I mean, let's not forget that there are MAGA people that are, registered foreign agents for India and Israel,
and Qatar,
and Qatar. Yeah, I've heard about people taking Qatar checks. I'd assume everybody, in Washington, D.C.'s somebody's, their sugar daddy, 100%, every single one. That's why it was kind of weird for me to go to the White House. I really do feel like the only lobbyist for the American people. And I know there are... Wait a minute.
So we got a new headline for him. He's the honest pollster and the leading lobbyist for the American people.
I just want an America that works for my kids, and
Absolutely.
Right now we're not on that
So is
track,
all this going to lead to AI? I mean, these politicians are captured, they're bribed, they're intimidated, they're bought off, whatever. Maybe it's time to just turn it over to AI. Now, I don't believe that because AI can just be programmed. But is that going to become more and more acceptable to young people? Because that would be their goal if you read Yarvin and these other guys, right?
Yeah, I don't think so, and here's why. First off, I think this marriage of tech bros and the MAGA movement, it's not going to last long. It'll probably blow up over H-1Bs. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Vivek in Ohio and what happens long-term with Elon. But it's like one of the troubling findings is that under 40 voters actually were kind of okay with AI taking over government and the judicial system and the military. The numbers were in the 30s to low 40s, depending on the question. But what was weird is that there was a really strong conservative young voter interest in AI taking over. It was 55% of young self-ID'd conservatives said, yeah, sure, let's give an advanced AI control over governance and legislative power. I think it was 49% of them said that they wanted the military to take over. That's like Skynet. And the liberals were really against it, which is kind of wild. And but I don't think that's going to happen. First off, I don't know. I think everything's really going to fall apart before then, to be honest with you. But it is weird, though, because Trump's big danger, and one of the things I said is that, sir, you're an economic populist president, but then you get in and you have all these optics that make it look like you're a plutocrat. I said in the White House, you got to smash the oligarchy, not be the oligarchy. And it's like, okay, multi-trillion deals with massive AI companies when everybody hates technology companies, that's not a long-term path to success. So these tech companies are highly distrusted. And yet I think this sort of vote, this young conservative vote for AI is more of a protest vote. You know what I mean? We're just fed up. We want order.
So, but you said something very interesting. You said something very interesting. You said you think it's all gonna fall apart before we could get to AI even being an option for taking over. Are you saying that you think the country is headed for a breakup? I mean, you have Trump signing an executive order telling states when it comes to the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and state rights, go pound sand. We're going to dictate to you with data centers and social credit scores and central bank digital currency, whatever else we want to do. So, go pound sand. Well, that's not sitting well with the governor of Arkansas. That's not sitting well with the governor of Florida and some red blue state governors as well.
Yeah.
But do you see us breaking apart into multiple regions as a country? Because isn't that what some Russian professor predicted 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Send it to me after this. It's hard to look at utter chaos and say, well, this is how it's going to reorder itself in a few years. But I'm just looking at the writing on the wall and saying, well, we have a pretty free YouTube. It's pretty good. People can complain about Google. I'm on YouTube. It's pretty good.
But that's only in the last year or so, because we couldn't post hardly squat there. But now we can. Now we can.
Yeah. Yep. And we have Twitter.
Yep.
Twitter is a marketplace of ideas. It is being won by the right, and we can argue about what the right means, but they're winning right now on Twitter, right? And I think that what these conversations are going to be about increasingly is just a microscope of delegitimization for the system. That's what we're just going to see over and over again. Everybody's going to be increasingly convinced that this whole thing is illegitimate, and they'd be right, because it is. I mean, we live in, as we've said, a global homo, kleptocrat, corporatist plutocracy, whatever you want to call it, right? String together a bunch of words, that's what we have. A cabal, unelected deep state that's, made common cause with a bunch of corporate welfare queens, like whatever you want to say, that's what we have. And I'm also not very bullish long-term on the economy. I think stocks will go up because we're printing a bunch of money. And, maybe Trump's tariffs, maybe, the deficit's going to come down a little bit. But ultimately what's happening is that we're kind of tapped out from a credit perspective. There's a declining birth rate. We've brought in a ton of people who are a burden on our system. We don't really have like any impending economic booms coming up from innovation. I think, I think the big one is AI, and it might actually choke out a lot of productivity in our economy. And so, plus we're being strangled by home prices and the whole monetary burdens. Like and maybe I'm not an economist. Maybe there's somebody that can look and say, no, this is going to be great. We're going to have this golden age. I don't think so. And I think an economic golden age would be very helpful for the country to sort of get everybody's focus off of how bad the system is. And I think that the uniparty system would want nothing better than that, right? But then they're subject to certain constraints and limitations. And those constraints and limitations are, well, they're not allowed to do anything that impacts business stability or affects corporate profits, right? And so we have this thing where the velocity of money, everything's stagnated. There's no creative destruction. It's all entrenched. This whole system is entrenched. So I look at a microscope of increasing delegitimization in the social networks and an entrenched system that can't change in a way that Americans need it to. And that's just, an immovable object and an unstoppable force they're going to meet. I don't know how. It could be some kind of Fort Sumter-y type thing, and you presented one scenario. There's probably a million. We could send in SEAL Team 6 to get Tina Peters, or Colorado could kill her, the cartels or whoever is doing that to her. Governor Pritzker could, do some stuff to ICE people. Or we could send in the National Guard in Minneapolis to try and roll up all these people who are defrauding the federal government. Like, why haven't we done that? Like, why aren't Somalian fraud gangs who are laundering American taxpayer money back to Muslim terrorist organizations in Somalia, why isn't that a clear and present danger to the United States? Like, why don't we take aggressive action to stop that? And I think that those are valid questions that younger people on the right are asking. Like, what are we even doing here? And it's like Trump had strong language on the campaign. He promised a lot of stuff, but he kind of seems comfortable right now, kind of like we're not asking these tough questions or taking these tough actions. And again, looking back, when the Democrats get in charge and people look and say, well, we gave the Republicans the best chance they're ever going to get at reforming the system, we're going to get to a point where people are like, nope, we can't vote ourselves out of it. And there's a lot of young people who can't form families. They don't have a future. Their jobs have been given away. There comes a time when they just won't put up with it anymore. And you know what? When it happens, they will have the moral high ground.
Let me ask you in closing, go back to the interview with Vanity Fair. This, according to the New York Times, with Miss Wiles took place over 11 interviews.
Yeah.
They have a lot of quotes. As you roll through the interview at Vanity Fair, there's a lot of quotes, sentences. Do you think these interviews were recorded? Because there seems to be some pushback today from the White House and some folks. But I would think Vanity Fair would want to protect their credibility and say, well, we have all the recordings. Do you think they were recorded?
Maybe. I really don't know. I guess we'll wait and see what comes out of the next one. I saw Susie Wiles address it. I'm not really sure what she said there. There wasn't a whole bunch of like they're lying, right? And,
no, I don't think I read that. I read her statement. It seemed more like she felt like they didn't put her in context, right, Logan? That's kind of what we were reading when we read it. Logan read it to me. But
I don't know what that means, but I will tell you, like,
if she said some of those things, by the way, why would she speak so freely? Is she frustrated? Did you sense her frustration when you were at the White House?
Did I sense frustration? I sensed great hospitality, a really nice woman, interested in what I had to say, trying to help me get across my message to Trump. And the subtext was they're trying to get him in front of more voices. And my personal opinion and feeling, having talked to him, was that he is still very much leading this whole thing. But the output that you see is based on the inputs that go into him, and the inputs that go into him are not what you would. They're not where we need to be if you wanted a true viable alternative to democratic socialism and a brutal addressing of government reform. It's basically people who donated to him and people who he likes on Fox News and people who he golfs with. That's just, and I guess he talks to some policy people too, and I guess there's policy people in the White House. But where are they? Like, where's Project 2025?
If she was bringing you in to try to give him a view of what people are thinking, then she's not happy with where things are going. That's what I would surmise from it. But
I don't have any inside knowledge here, but I know that chief of staffs don't last that long. And I know that they probably also make a very salient target to take your angst out on. I also think looking around in the White House, there's not a lot of other stuff that they can really do. And I do think they need a pivot. And I'm not saying that it needs to be her, but there needs to be some intent here. Like, there needs to be a plan. I told them they needed the fight plan for America. There should be daily war rooms. There should be multiple czars to go after this. There should be an online presence. There should be a push. Like, hey, this is how we're going to fix America. Like, how can they expect people to vote for Republicans? Now, I understand that there's limitations in Congress, and I would love better people than Mike Johnson and John Thune. But at the end of the day, they are limited. And part of this is like, you can only fight them so long. You know what I mean? It's like Trump's not going to be on the ballot again. So is he just going to keep trashing Mike Johnson and John Thune until they're completely unelectable? And then he can't even bail them out? How does this look?
Yeah. Well, it looks to me like it's all based on how it's all based on personal feelings. It's all subjective to him, unfortunately, is how I think he sees everything through his own lens. That's what I'm picking up on. But I want to go back to the Vanity Fair article real quick. Supposedly, she's quoted as saying, alcoholism does bad things to relationships, and so it was with my dad and me, end quote. Quote, some clinical psychologist that knows 1 million times more than I do will dispute what I'm going to say, but high-functioning alcoholics or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink. So I'm a little bit of an expert in personalities, end quote. While said Trump has, quote, an alcoholic's personality, end quote. He, quote, operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing, zero, nothing, end quote. Okay, now if you go through this article, and again, it's at Vanity Fair, if you go to the article, there are all of these quotes. So one has to wonder over 11, what was reported to be 11 interviews, is this person doing this shorthand and keeping up with it? Is it out of context? Is it on recording and be backed up? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I'm sure at least some of it is recorded.
Okay. Well, what do you make of that? Though? What do you make of that comment though about Trump doesn't drink, but what if it's true that this was said, an alcoholic's personality who operates with the view that there's nothing he can't do, nothing, zero, nothing. What do you make of that?
I think it's an unfortunate framing. I actually look at a lot of Trump's leadership style and know that I'm not 100% like Trump, but we share some things. I've led people. I've been a leader for 20 years in corporate America and the military. And he's an intuitive leader. And like, first off, you need leaders who can boldly execute a vision, right? And there's different kinds. There's your managers, there's your taskmasters and your bean counters. But at the end of the day, if you have an organization that has big things to do, you need somebody who can look at something and without saying no or making excuses, right? And then those kind of people like to pivot and constantly, get new information. This is a very military thing, too, a military officer thing, which is like, why? Yes, there's rules. And yes, I'm going to understand the rules. I'm going to understand why they're there and when they need to be followed and when they don't. But then I'm also going to constantly assess new information because we need to be dynamic and I need to pivot, right? And then the mission is more important than any one ego. So I'm going to listen to everybody and make my judgment. And, we're all a team here, mission oriented, right? And I did this in Walmart. I did this in my other organizations. And sometimes it's chaotic to be under. It really is, because all of a sudden the leader might talk to somebody and you're like, why is he talking to that person? And it's like, well, he's got a 30,000-foot view and he just made a snap decision that just saved everybody's lives. That actually plays out in the real world. And, I think that is kind of like a lot of what he does, especially because of how he came up in real estate development with a lot of subcontractors and a very dynamic real estate marketplace and the business world, constantly assessing new information, reading the paper every day and making new judgments. And so I think that's very unfair because I think that's like he is. Now, what I will say, though, is that a military leader that's like that, it's like, okay, well, you've just been given control of Eastern Command and you're going to literally, create an invasion to push back against Hitler, right? Or whatever, right? You're now leading a tank brigade or whatever. It's like, well, okay, now I have single-minded focus on one mission and I need to be disciplined and completely focused on this one thing. And maybe that means that my mental picture needs to change. Maybe it means I need to listen to different people or that the rules have changed. And I don't know if everybody's capable of doing that. But what does a leader do in that situation? Well, they acknowledge their shortcomings and delegate, right? And so if Trump can't really fundamentally understand the major conflicts facing especially the young people who are going to decide the next elections, then there has to be a point where it's like, well, I'm going to scale back my discussion. We're going to get the right people in here that understand. And just talking to him, I didn't get the feeling that he understands the crushing despair that people have when they go to ShopRite and get a cart full of groceries, or the feeling that they're never going to be able to afford a house. And so how can I even think about having a family? And Trump is talking about gas prices. This is the fundamental disconnect. He's never had to struggle for these things, and I think that he loves now more than I think he did sort of taking victory laps off of unearned wins. This is like the same Bidenomics stuff. It's like, yep, we're in a golden age. They literally are putting out from the Trump 47 rapid response Twitter things, they were putting out memes that said we're in the golden age now because gas prices went down, and that's tone deaf. That's like people are looking at that and saying, well, the general in charge of our army is tilting at windmills here. What are we even doing? I'm going to get sent off to my death. And that's it. We're at war. This is economic and governmental war, and the left is fighting it. The right is derelict. It's AWOL. It's not fighting this. Trump is the avatar for the new right that desperately wants this system corrected. And the way they're starting to talk about him, especially the Fuentes folks, the young right, they are very brutal about this. They think that Trump is owned by people. They post memes about he fell for it again. And how many times is that football going to be held out there only to be yanked back?
Mm-hmm. So 2 last questions, Mark. Do you believe that these interviews by Susie, do you believe, is it your opinion that they were given, and this is kind of a way of her to protect her reputation, that, hey, don't blame me? Because obviously you say she helped bring you in to try to convince Trump about certain things, and now she's reportedly given these 11 interviews where she's reportedly saying these things. I guess I'd like to know if they really are accurate. But if she is this not a way of kind of protecting her brand on her way out the door where she can continue running a consulting firm or something and not be blamed? Hey, I tried, but it's not easy to micromanage Donald Trump. Is this in part what she's doing, protecting her, trying to, wave a flag, don't blame me, protect her reputation, or what?
I really don't know. The optics are not great. I know that her calling, her life's work is representing large corporations. That's that's her job. She runs a big lobbyist firm that has major industry people like pharmaceutical companies. I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you, but there was, in my opinion, less troublesome things in the Washington Post article that was focused on me, and it felt like there was heartburn about it. And I just don't know what this is going to do. So I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll get a feeling from AmFest. Okay,
and then let's ask you this. We go into January. Within the first, 30 days of January in the new year, 2026? How many days does he have in the new year to get together his contract with America, his fight plan, as you call it? How many days in the new year does he have in order to set up his plan, his contract with America, to keep from being absolutely destroyed in the midterm elections?
Yeah, I would have hoped that they had done it already. We're down to 320 days or something like that. You fast forward a month from now, we're in it's way worse. We're in the 200s, the 290s, right? And also they're just announced today that they're going to try and codify 150 executive orders into the next reconciliation bill, right? And that's good. That's really good news. That's Republicans. They could have talked about this a long time ago. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you passing anything? And it's like, okay, well, instead of Trump railing against the Republican Party that is limited in Congress, he could be out there saying, no, we got this. We got 2 more bites of the reconciliation apple, and we're going to get it all in. And that was not the messaging, right? And it's like, okay, well, if Mike Johnson comes out today and says, yep, this is the plan. We're going to have reconciliation by the end of January. We're going to codify 150 Trump executive orders. First off, John Thune should be out there, shoulder to shoulder on this one. And maybe he was. I don't know. I didn't see it. But it's like, if that's the plan, well, you got 30 days to tell America how great all that stuff is and exactly what that's going to do for them, right? Or are we just going to sit and let this happen and then afterwards try and tell America how great this is going to be when nobody even knows what was in it, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, you're going to look back at the 119th Congress and be like, well, it passed 8 things. Well, what was in those things? And Trump has been doing, I guess, a better job with One Big Beautiful Bill, telling people about the impending populist tax cuts, the no tax on tips, this kind of stuff. But the One Big Beautiful Bill itself, didn't really move the polling numbers. People were confused about it. People were upset it didn't cut the deficit. So even the way they're communicating about this stuff, and I was dead serious. Don't tell America that we're in a golden age. Show us the golden path to the golden age and give us real achievable things that the Republicans are going to set out to do. Little empty radio boxes, check them off on the website as they get done. People shouldn't be confused about what the Trump administration is going to accomplish. That's the problem. Is this situation where it's like, well, why 11 months into this thing are we trying to set expectations?
Yeah, 100%. Here you go. Follow him on. And you don't have any, by the way, before I show your X account, you have no idea what the presidential address tomorrow night's about.
No, but I would assume it's about a Washington Post and the New York Times article.
Here we go. At Honest Pollster, Mark Mitchell tonight. Wow, fascinating interview. A lot of great analysis. And of course, a lot of people are frustrated, a lot of us. And Mark understands it. And of course, he sees it in his polling. And when's your next set of polling numbers coming out that will help us further understand how it's impacting him?
Yeah, we have new stuff coming out. Definitely the NATO one was a really big one. A lot of fresh numbers out again about people just don't think Trump is doing enough. And we're going to be going after that theme pretty hard. Next stop, numbers back next week on, well, what does MAGA even mean? Do people care about that? Or are they going back into the arms of traditional Republicans? I don't know if you saw that, but NBC tried to come out and put a poll out that says, look, because of Trump, people are souring on MAGA. And everybody in D.C. is going to misinterpret that and say, oh, look, the time of the establishment Republican has returned.
Yeah.
No, guys. It's going to a place where you people are not prepared at all.
Well, I'm glad you're keeping track of it and helping us understand it. Follow him here, folks. There he is, at Honest Pollster, RasmussenReports.com, RasmussenReports.com. And as always, Mark, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Mark Mitchell checking in, head Honest Pollster, at Honest Pollster. He's the Honest Pollster, and he's also the prime lobbyist for the American people. That's what he is. Heard it tonight. Another great slogan. I'm not paid. I'm not in anybody's pocket. I'm just here for the American people, for my kids. That's what he said. I like that. Well, I'm here for my kids, and I'm here for my grandkids. And we got real problems. He's right. And we see that the war drums are beating, and the Europeans seem to want to be heavily involved in conscription and getting ready for drafts and going to war. It's not looking good, but it is what it is, and we're trying to understand it and help people see it and know how to respond. That's what we do here. All right, guys, if you appreciate our broadcast, I need you to support us. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Please don't forget about us and your end of the year giving. It's so vital we hear from you so we can set our budgets for 2026 and keep pushing out free programming, cutting edge programming, folks, that helps you understand the times and know how to respond. And of course, we have a database now of what next year will be 36 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks. So many of my books, all of my books are in the vault. You don't need to buy them. They're in the vault at worldviewtube.com/vault. And by the way, we just put in there my book on Hamas a few weeks ago, my book on my documentary Siege, my book on my documentary Sabotage. And I just finished up on Sunday night, part 4, on why I'm a Christian Zionist from the Bible. And I will be releasing that as a book. And you do not need to buy it. It'll automatically be in the vault for you at worldviewtube.com/vault. And then in the new year, we should have out my new book, my next book on my 1.5-year study of the book of Revelation, verse by verse. It's a commentary and a study guide. That will also be available for Vault members automatically. You don't need to buy it. worldviewtube.com/vault. And then I have a new book coming out. Yeah, I'm taking a lot of my TV shows, a lot of my series, and I'm transcribing them, and I'm working on them, and I'm cleaning them up, and I'm turning them into books. And one of the next ones is Transhumanism is Eugenics. The power elite, the history of the power elite. And transhumanism is eugenics. That will be out in the first quarter of the new year. That, too, is not a book you need to buy. It'll automatically be in there as a PDF for Vault members, worldviewtube.com/vault. So there are 2 ways to support us. One, worldviewtube.com/vault. And by the way, get it as a Christmas gift for somebody. Go to worldviewtube.com/vault. You can get it as a Christmas gift. When you get there, just click that you want to get either the year or monthly or whatever. Click it. And then when you get there, be sure to check this is a gift. And it'll make a great gift. And we're just going to keep cranking out and putting so much content in there for you. Okay? So makes a great gift. Worldviewtube.com/vault. The other way, worldviewfoundation.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Worldviewfoundation.com. Okay? All righty, guys. We're going to be here through the 23rd of December. The 23rd of December will be what is supposed to be our last day of broadcasting for 2025. And we'll be back that first Monday in the new year, unless there's breaking news. And if there is, we will come right back to the desk. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. You depend on us. We're not going to let you down. We'll be here. Thank you for your support. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
All right, welcome. Glad you're with us. We're going to be joined here by Annie Cyrus, and we want to talk about something that really fits well with what we've been warning about here now for many, many years, and that is, well, I think starting in 2008 on our website, so that's certainly many years. On our website in 2008, we started warning about a group called La Raza. It's perhaps translated as the race. It's a group of people that believe that, New Mexico, Arizona, California, that they have been colonized by the Christians and the whites, the white supremacists, if you will. And it needs to be taken back for the race, I guess made part of Mexico. Well, we warned about that group, as I said, starting on our website about 2008. Another group we've been warning about for many, many, many years is, of course, the Weather Underground. They were involved in the many terrorist domestic bombings in the late 60s and early 70s. Bill Ayers, Bernadine Dorn, etc., including having interviewed myself, the man that went undercover into that group, Larry Grothwald. He went undercover for the Ohio police and then eventually the FBI. Well, the Weather Underground, they wrote a manifesto in about 1973, 74, somewhere in there. One of the guys that's going to bring it to me. It's a really big, thick document. There's Weather Underground Prairie Fire right on the cover. Well, in that document, if it's not down there, it's not down there. I sure thought it was. In that document, the Weather Underground, they're talking about the system, burning down the system. And of course, as we've always said for years, the system they're talking about is capitalism, right? Remember Karl Marx, my object in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. Then they go on to praise the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. Sound familiar, folks? And then they go on to praise China and Mao Zedong. Well, now there's a group out that many are finding out about called the Turtle Island Liberation Front. The Turtle Island Liberation Front. It was the last one you found, was it, my friend? Well, there it is. The Weather Underground Prairie Fire, a political statement, came out in July of 1974. And any of you can get a copy of it. Mine is all flagged up with Post-it notes. And it's really quite interesting to connect these groups together. By the way, don't forget about the movie that came out earlier this year. We played the trailer and warned about it. Remember that? That was the movie called One Battle After. And that was starring Leo DiCaprio. Leo DiCaprio, is that how you say his name? Leo DiCaprio. And wasn't that movie about basically going after ICE and bombings? And I compared it to a Weather Underground, modern day Weather Underground movement when we talked about it. Well, now you hear that the authorities in California, working in concert with the FBI, have arrested some folks that are reportedly tied to this group, the Turtle Island Liberation Front. Well, I want to talk about that today, but before I do, I did write an article this morning researching this group. I wanted to tie them, at least their ideology, back to the Weather Underground, back to La Raza, and show you that there's really nothing new under the sun. These are various splinter groups that I think are united in their worldview. If you go to worldviewtube.com and then go to our news section, or you can get right there by going, I think, to worldviewtimes.com, worldviewtimes.com, you'll see the article this morning that I put out called Turtle Island, the Turtle Island Liberation Front. And I subtitled it, A Frontline Assault in the Worldview War Against America. And this is very, again, instructive, because for how long have myself and others, including my next guest, Annie Cyrus, been warning you that we were going to see an increase of terrorist attacks in America hitting multiple locations in the same day or in the same 48 hours? Well, apparently this group, according to press reports and the government,